Today, we are diving into one of the most brilliant and, frankly, one of the weirdest novels of the 20th century, Virginia Woolf's Orlando. Now, it calls itself a biography, but it pretty much breaks every single rule of what a biography is supposed to be. And you know what? That's exactly what makes it a masterpiece. This line right here, it's basically the mission statement for the entire book. Woolf was willing to risk sounding completely absurd to create something new, something that wasn't dull. And trust me, with a character who lives for centuries and changes gender, she definitely pulled it off. All right, let's actually meet our protagonist. The book's full title is Orlando, a Biography, but the person at the center of this story is, well, let's just say they're impossible. For starters, Orlando's life kicks off in the Elizabethan era and goes all the way to Woolf's own time in the 1920s. And the craziest part? They barely age a day. So right off the bat, our whole idea of a life story is just thrown out the window. A pretty strange start for a biography, right? But just when you think you have a handle on it, it gets even weirder. About halfway through this incredibly long life, Orlando falls into a deep sleep and wakes up to find they've transformed from a man into a woman. It's the same person, the same mind, same memories, but a totally different body. And with that comes a whole new set of rules from society. So this brings us to the central puzzle of the novel, doesn't it? What on earth was Virginia Woolf up to? How can this fantasy tale about an immortal, gender-fluid aristocrat possibly be called a biography? Well, that's exactly what we're going to figure out. To really get Orlando, we first have to understand the groundbreaking technique Woolf used to write it. It's a style that completely changed fiction forever, stream of consciousness. So what does that actually mean? Well, think about how your own mind works. It doesn't move in a straight line, right? It jumps from a thought, to a memory, to a random feeling, back to what you're seeing right now. Stream of consciousness tries to capture that messy, fluid, true-to-life experience on the page. It's all about showing what life feels like from the inside. And this chart here lays it out perfectly. A typical story goes from A to B to C. Event, explanation, conclusion. Super logical. But stream of consciousness mirrors how our minds actually work. You see something, a perception, and it triggers a memory, which then sparks a feeling, which might conjure up a random image. It's a wander, not a march. Now, here's the crucial part. For Woolf, this wasn't just some cool stylistic trick. She genuinely believed that old-school novels got life all wrong by only focusing on the big plot points. For her, real life, true reality, was in that constant shower of tiny impressions, what she beautifully called the atoms as they fall upon the mind. This technique was the only way she felt she could capture that truth. So, armed with this revolutionary new tool, Woolf wasn't just trying to write a new kind of novel. Oh no, she set her sights on reinventing the biography itself. I mean, think about it for a second. Is your life just a list of dates, major events, and official documents? Or is it something more alive, more intangible than that? That's the exact question Woolf was wrestling with. And Woolf had this absolutely brilliant metaphor for it. She said a great biography needs both granite and rainbow. The granite, that's the hard facts, the dates, the events, the stuff you can prove. The old biography was all granite, but the rainbow, that's the fleeting, beautiful, hard-to-pin-down stuff. Personality, imagination, the inner life. The new biography she was pioneering wanted to capture the rainbow. And Orlando is the ultimate expression of this idea. It cheekily calls itself a biography while just gleefully smashing every rule. The big historical events are just wallpaper. The real story is what's happening inside Orlando's head. Time in this book isn't measured by a clock, but by shifts in consciousness. Woolf is blurring fact and fantasy to get at a truth that's way deeper than just facts. And this is where it all comes together. All these wild literary experiments, the crazy timeline, the stream of consciousness, this new biography, they weren't just for show. They were all tools Woolf needed to explore one of the biggest questions of all. What even is gender? This is the question at the novel's core. Are men and women just fundamentally different because of biology? Or do we become different because of how the world treats us? Because of the clothes we're forced to wear and the roles we're expected to play? Orlando is her grand, fantastical experiment to find out. And this here gets right to the heart of her argument. It's so clever. As a man, Orlando is powerful, free, assured. He inherits property, he commands respect. The world is his oyster. But the second he becomes a woman, bam, suddenly she's tangled up in legal restrictions, social expectations, and petticoats. The crucial point here is that Orlando's mind, their consciousness, is the exact same. It's the world's reaction to their body that completely reshapes their reality. Which leads us to Woolf's incredibly powerful conclusion. For her, the experience of being a man or woman isn't really about biology at all. It's a direct result of social power, of education, of freedom, or the lack of it. A mind isn't born with a gender. It's shaped into one by the world it grows up in. So let's bring it all home. Why does this strange, playful, nearly century-old book feel more relevant and talked about today than ever before? It's because the very form of the novel, the way it's built, is its argument. By telling the story this way, Woolf doesn't just tell us, she shows us that identity isn't some fixed thing, but something fluid that changes over time. She shows us that time is psychological, not mechanical, and maybe most famously, that gender is a social idea, not a biological fact. These are profoundly modern ideas, and she was exploring them back in 1928. And really, if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's the simple idea. Woolf's genius was in shifting literature's entire focus from the external event to the internal experience. She doesn't just tell you Orlando's incredible story, she makes you feel it, makes you live inside the flow of their consciousness for 300 years. And in doing that, she reminds us that the truest, most real story of any life is always, always the one that's lived on the inside.